This happened to me about 2 years ago, around late December of 2020. I was 19 around the time. Me and my girlfriend were at my grandparents' place having a couple drinks out in the garage until it got too cold to stay out there. It was one of the coldest nights of the year, and there was a bad blizzard that night. We live in Canada, by the way. We both went back to the house around 2 a.m. She went into my room, and I went out in the kitchen to cook something for us in the oven. I was on my phone, standing alone out in the kitchen, when my grandma and my girlfriend both walked out into the kitchen together. It was a bit strange because my grandma is never up that late, and it was even stranger that my girlfriend came out at the same time. And the first thing my grandma said to me is, "Don't go back out there tonight. On a night like this, people lose their lives." I was a little bit freaked out because I was just about to head back out to the garage to grab something. I never told anyone I was going back out. My girlfriend and my grandma just stood there staring at me with the weirdest expressions I've ever seen, with very unnatural smiles that did seem right. My girlfriend then walked over and gave me a hug. When I grabbed her, she was ice cold. I commented about this, and when I mentioned how cold she was, her expression changed. Her smile faded, and she looked up at me with really serious, sad eyes and didn't say anything. There was something else I noticed too. She smelled like a campfire, an earthy, smoky smell. There wasn't an explanation for this, and she didn't smell like that earlier. I swear at that moment I got chills all over. There was something so off about it all, but I couldn't put my finger on it. My girlfriend whispered in my ear, "Don't go outside tonight." She walked back over to my grandma. She stood beside her with her head down and a serious expression while my grandma was still staring at me with that weird fake smile. It was so bizarre, I just stood there speechless. The wind began to literally f***ing howl outside. My grandma turned and looked at my girlfriend. "Don't mess with black magic," she said. "Nothing good is going to come from it." My girlfriend didn't say anything. She continued looking down. I stood there confused. My girlfriend looked up at me. "We have to go now," she said. They both started walking away. My grandma looked back at me for a second. "See you on the flip side," she said with that weird smile. I got another chill through my whole body when she said that. They turned a corner and left the kitchen. I stood there for a while. I didn't know what to make of it all. I decided not to go out to the garage. I'd go out and get my stuff the next morning. I stayed out in the kitchen for another 10 minutes until the food was done. I went back into my room with it. My girlfriend was in bed laying down. She got up and we put on a movie. I guess I was quiet because she asked me, "What's wrong?" I told her everything was okay. It took me 10 minutes to say something about it because, to be honest, I was still frightened by it. I turned to her and asked why her and my grandma came out to the kitchen. The second I said that, my nose started bleeding. I ran to the bathroom and got something to stop the bleeding. When I went back in the room, I told my girlfriend everything. As you can guess, she said she never went out to the kitchen, and she swore on someone's life. She was in the room the whole time. She also didn't smell like smoke anymore. We went and woke up my grandma right after, and my grandma said the same thing. She actually thought we were trying to mess with her, and she didn't believe me. We were so freaked out after this, we had trouble sleeping for the rest of the night. The part that really messed my girlfriend up was when I told her about how cold she felt and how she smelled like smoke. The only explanation we could come up with was that maybe if I went outside that night, something bad would have happened to me. Maybe the spirits of dead relatives watching over me came to me in that form so I wouldn't be scared and they could get the message through. The last part of it that made sense was the part about the black magic. My girlfriend just got a book about witchcraft from her friend the week prior. My girlfriend never opened to book again after this. She took what was said as a warning. I've been thinking about writing this story down for the past 2 years, and my girlfriend encouraged me to finally do it because maybe some else out there had an experience like this. To this day, I still get chills thinking about it, especially the last thing said, "See you on the flip side." I've been working as a lifeguard at the local swimming pool for several years now. Calling it just a pool doesn't do it justice. This place is enormous, the largest facility in the city with 3 separate pools, an Olympic-sized pool for laps and diving, an outdoor pool with 2 slides, and an indoor pool with a single slide. As head guard, I'm responsible for everything: the chemicals, managing the lifeguards, and opening and closing the facility. I had heard stories over the years about the pool being haunted. Older lifeguards spoke of a little girl who sometimes wandered the pool areas. Lights and showers would turn on randomly. Objects would be knocked over, and sometimes you'd hear a child's voice asking to go down a slide when no one was there. I never experienced any of it, and I dismissed it as typical lifeguard folklore, until one day, things started to feel different. Abby, a co-worker and fellow head guard, told me about a nightmare she had. In her dream, she was stationed by the diving boards when a child climbed to the high dive and jumped. He hit the water but immediately began to drown. Abby dove after him, but no matter how fast she swam, the kid always seemed just out of reach. The water below her stretched endlessly. It felt as if the ground had disappeared and she was falling through an infinite depth. Desperate, she tried to swim upward, only to feel a cold hand grab her leg and pull her down. She woke up shaking, drenched in sweat. I thought it was just a dream. That was until halfway through our shift, Abby had to actually save a kid who had jumped from the high dive. He was the same age, the same kid she had seen in her dream. She looked pale and rattled, whispering, "That was the same kid." I told myself it was coincidence and tried to let it go. Later that week, I had my own encounter. The kids were doing tricks off the diving boards, competing to see who could perform the coolest moves. One boy attempted a barrel roll, hit the water sideways, and immediately began to sink. I dove in after him, but as I swam, the water around me turned ice cold. My leg felt frozen, heavy, as if it were being held by something solid. I looked down and saw a dead, gray hand clamped around my calf, dragging me into the depths. Terror shot through me, and I struggled upward, gasping for air, until I woke up in my bed, soaked and trembling. The icy grip lingered in my memory. The following day, I returned to work with a sense of unease I couldn't shake. Everything seemed normal. No floating objects, no flickering lights. Abby arrived, looking exhausted. She told me about the nightmare she had experienced after closing the pool the night before. She had been finishing chemical tests when she walked into the indoor pool and saw a fully clothed elderly man floating face down in the catch tank at the bottom of the slide. She hadn't attempted to rescue him, knowing the pool had been closed for at least 20 minutes. But when she moved to call 911, she experienced an out-of-body sensation. She felt herself hovering above her body, looking down, and saw the man standing behind her. Before she could react, a cold hand clamped over her mouth and dragged her backward into the water. EMS arrived soon after, but she had experienced something far worse than anyone could have imagined. Days passed with an uneasy normalcy. Then, one evening, as I was finishing up the water tests after the pool closed, the feeling of being watched returned. The indoor pool was quiet, too quiet. I had to add a bag of chemicals to the pool, and as I approached the catch tank, I felt my stomach tighten. Relief washed over me when there was no body in the water, but the sense of unease lingered. I left the pool, grabbed my things, and tried to arm the alarm system. The light on the panel wasn't green. A door somewhere was open. My pulse quickened as I realized it was the emergency exit to the indoor pool. I moved slowly, head on a swivel, and shut the door. No one was there, no bodies, no shadows. I exhaled, trying to calm myself, but then came a loud clang, metal hitting metal, somewhere in the Olympic pool. I froze. Darkness stretched before me. A shadow moved across the entrance. My instinct screamed at me, "Run." I sprinted to the office, grabbed my bag, armed the alarm system, and bolted for my car. As I reached the lot, I realized my car wasn't locked. I fumbled with the keys and finally got the ignition going. Suddenly, right behind the emergency exit, the silhouette of a man stood watching me. The temperature in the car dropped sharply, ice crawling over my skin. Heart hammering, I floored the accelerator and didn't stop until I was home. Even then, no amount of heater could shake the bone-chilling cold. Home should have been safe. The porch light glowed warmly, the only beacon against the night. My family was asleep, leaving the house eerily quiet. I crept upstairs to my room, passing the motion-sensing air freshener that squirted, leaving a faint floral scent in the hall. Then I heard them. Heavy footsteps coming up the stairs, slow and deliberate. They reached the top, stomped down the hallway, paused outside my room, then continued toward the bathroom. I could hear the air freshener squirt again, but the footsteps remained. Whoever, or whatever it was, didn't retreat. I locked the bathroom door and spent the night huddled inside, listening to every sound. For weeks afterward, sleep was impossible. Every shadow in my room, every creak of the house at night, reminded me of that cold grip, the water dragging me down, and the faceless presence stalking me upstairs. Even now, years later, I still have nightmares about the haunted pool, the shadowed hallways, and the icy hands reaching from the depths. So about 12 to 13 years ago, I was in my freshman year of college at Southern Oregon University. As part of almost a monthly ritual, my friend and I would drive with whatever friends we could gather along with us through the redwoods to the coast to gamble at Elk Valley Casino, 18 and over casino. My friend and I would get anyone who was curious, and we would always burn a random mixtape, blast music, tell stories, and drive through the woods and gamble. This happened many times and was always a blast. One particular night, we took a teammate of ours, we were college wrestlers, with us. Everything went as usual, and we were driving back. The road from Southern Oregon to the coast of California in the Redwoods is a small two-way highway and very windy and isolated, at least until you get near the ocean and things open up. I was driving on the way back from the casino. My friend was in the passenger seat and our teammate was sleeping in the back seat. It was somewhere between 1 to 3 in the morning, probably closer to 3 as it was becoming daylight by the time I got home. It's a 2-hour trip. We were focused on our thoughts, and I was paying attention to the road, not talking to my friend to avoid waking the guy in the back. On those windy roads, when you turn, everything in front of you is black until the headlights swing forward. While taking a random corner, I saw something large and black. This was disturbing because it was so dark outside that I shouldn't have been able to see anything at all. It looked darker than dark. I don't know how to describe it. It stood out the way deep black stands out on a black and white canvas. As the headlights moved, they lit up the road but didn't touch this thing. It stayed completely black, straddling the white line on the right side of the road. My brain was scrambling to identify it. Nothing made sense. As I drove closer, all I felt was fear, evil, and the unknown. I felt frozen. It was more than 9 feet tall, completely black, shapeless, like a void or shadow. No face, no features. I still have no idea what it was. It remains the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. It took a minute or two after passing it for me to finally speak. I yelled, "What was that?" and looked at my friend, whose face was full of terror. He didn't need to say anything. I knew he saw it too. He started yelling for me to pull the car over and got angry when I didn't. He begged me to turn around. I told him everything in my body was telling me that thing was evil and we needed to get away. The yelling woke our teammate, who sided with my friend without knowing what happened, calling me scared and telling me to go back. I pulled over and got out. I said I would go back, but my friend had to drive because I didn't want to be responsible if something happened. We drove back and nothing was there. I stayed the night in my friend's dorm, and neither of us slept. It took days before I could shake it enough to sleep normally. I have no clue what I saw and never found anything similar. My grandma used to tell me scary stories when I was little. There's one I'll never forget, no matter how many years pass, or how much I try to convince myself that it was just a tale meant to spook a child. I was 10 years old when Grandma came to live with us. Back then, I didn't really understand grief, not properly. I didn't realize how much she must have been hurting or how heavy the silence in her old house must have been after Granddad passed away. Looking back now, as an adult, I can picture it too well. The empty corridors, the dust settling on unused furniture, the radio she no longer turned on because every song reminded her of something, of him. So when she finally agreed, or maybe just surrendered, to moving in with us, it was like she brought a whole different world with her. My mom protested a bit, muttering about space and routines, about how Grandma had her ways. But my dad insisted, and eventually, she came to stay in the spare room across from mine. I didn't complain. I loved Grandma. She was loud, fun, Unpredictable. She had this way of making ordinary moments feel like small adventures. She always had boiled sweets hidden in one pocket or another, and she'd sneak me some when Mum wasn't looking. She'd always defend me too, stepping in with a sharp tongue when I got scolded for something. But most of all, I loved her stories. She had stories for everything. Her childhood during the war, the mischief she and her friends got up to, on the coast after being evacuated, the rumors from her old village about ghosts and strange happenings. Some were silly, some sad, and some sounded like the kind of adventures I wished I could live. But her scary stories, those were something else entirely. She told them differently. She slowed down, lowered her voice, let the room darken with nothing but the moonlight leaking through the curtains. She'd sit close to me, so close I could smell the sweet mint scent of her breath and hear the slight tremble in her voice as she spoke. Her blue eyes would fix on mine, unblinking, until I felt the hairs on my arms prickle. Most of them I forgot, but one story stayed with me forever. The story of the shower and of Mr. Longfingers. It started on a night when I asked her why she always preferred baths. She took impossibly long ones, lighting candles, humming old songs, soaking until the water went cold, and the bathroom filled with fog, thick as smoke. It drove my mum insane, but Grandma said it was the only place she could relax. It's the only place that's safe to relax, she corrected, leaning closer on my bed. People like me, people who are sensitive to certain things, we have to have baths. Long ones. We can't risk showers. Risk? I asked, feeling that familiar thrill of dread and interest. Why? She glanced toward the window first, as though checking something outside, then turned back to me with a seriousness that made my stomach flutter. Well, she began slowly, you only need to be careful in the shower if you close your eyes too long. 5 seconds is fine. 10 is pushing it, but any longer than that. She let the words hang in the air like the last note of a warning bell. I swallowed. Why? What happens? You know that game kids play, where someone turns around and counts and the others creep up behind them as quietly as they can? I nodded, clutching my blanket. Well, she whispered, that's how it is in the shower. That's how it is with Mr. Longfingers. A cold tremor ran down my back. Who's Mr. Longfingers? No one knows for sure. Her voice dropped to a murmur. Some think he's a creature drawn to the heat we give off in the shower. Others think he slips into our world through the steam. But what everyone agrees on is this. If you close your eyes too long, he notices. My throat tightened. Notices what? That you're not watching. I pulled the blanket up to my chin. They say if you go past 15 seconds, Grandma continued, you might start to hear something. A tapping, soft, rhythmic, a set of long fingers drumming on the glass of the shower door. And if you ever hear that sound, she leaned so close, I could feel her breath on my cheek. Promise me something, sweetheart. My voice barely came out. What? Never. Open your eyes. I didn't sleep properly for a week. Every time I shut my eyes, even in bed, I imagined something standing just out of sight, something tall, thin, with fingers too long to belong to a normal person. In my dreams, it stood beside the shower, waiting for me to blink. Too long. And in the shower itself, that was the worst. Shampoo got in my eyes constantly because I kept opening them too early. Every second I counted felt like a step towards something horrible. I'd feel a pressure in the air, like someone holding their breath, like something waiting. My mom noticed the nightmares and demanded I tell her what was going on. When she heard about Grandma's story, she was furious. Not at me, but at Grandma. That night, through the thin wall between their room and mine, I heard Mom hissing angrily at my dad. She's terrified him with some ridiculous monster story. You talk to her tomorrow, or I will. The next evening, Grandma visited me. She looked sadder than I'd ever seen her. She touched my hand gently and said, you know I'd never let anything hurt you, right? I nodded. I only wanted to teach you to be careful. Maybe I took it too far. But don't worry, I'll deal with Mr. Longfingers. I'll scare him off myself. I believed her. A week later, I was the one who found her. I woke early to a strange, heavy thumping, followed by the sound of running water. The shower. I ran to the bathroom door and banged on it, shouting her name. No answer. The handle turned easily. It wasn't locked. A wave of thick steam pushed out, and through it I saw her, lying on the shower floor, eyes wide, hand curled against the glass. The steam patterns showed the dragging marks her fingers had made. Dad said she died of a heart attack. Quick. Painless. But I knew better. Even then. I know it even more now. I haven't taken a shower since that day. My wife thinks it's trauma. She thinks I'm scared of the memory of seeing my grandmother dead. She's wrong, because later that day, after they took Grandma's body away and everyone else was downstairs crying and making phone calls, I crept back into the bathroom. One more time. The steam was still clinging to the glass. And when I looked closely at the marks her fingers had left, I saw something that froze me to the bone, something I've never told anyone, because those finger marks weren't only on the inside. There were matching marks dragged down from the outside too. My uncle died and left me his house, and a terrifying secret. Our prayers were opening doors to horrors hiding beneath reality. Uncle Jonas was always a recluse. My mom said Vietnam destroyed him, turning her goofy big brother into someone cold and haunted. After my grandma died, he stayed alone in her old farmhouse, filling it with junk, occult trinkets, and things he collected from garage sales. My mom hated how he ruined the place, but as a kid, I loved exploring it. When I was 12, they had their final blowout, and we stopped visiting. Jonas and I only kept in touch through email until life pulled us apart. He used to tell me legends and warnings, strange stories about spirits, doors between worlds, and something buried beneath the town. I thought it was harmless eccentricity. So when he died and left everything to me, I never expected the horror hidden in that house. The place looked worse than ever. Dust thick as felt, boxes stacked like crooked tombstones. But the comics and collectibles were gone. Instead, there were journals, old photos, and items that looked like ritual artifacts. The house creaked constantly, as if breathing. That first night I slept there, I dreamt of Jonas standing at my bed. His eyes were hollow, his skin gray, and his whisper layered like several voices speaking at once. Finish it. I woke drenched in sweat. While cleaning, I found a false wall in the attic. Behind it was a pristine study. Nothing like the rest of the house. Shelves of ancient books lined the walls. A green stained glass window shaped like an eye watched over the room, and a skylight opened to the sky with a mechanical hum. On a pedestal lay a journal full of symbols, clippings, and frantic notes. Jonas wrote about something called the Order of the Verdant Root. According to him, an ancient evil was sealed beneath the town's oldest church. Christianity, he said, didn't protect people. It fed the entity. Every prayer and sermon eroded the seal that kept it imprisoned. I assumed he'd gone mad. But after days with little sleep, I started seeing things. Shadows shifted when I wasn't looking. Whispers seeped through walls. My reflection lagged behind my movements. And then I found it. The photograph that ripped away any doubt. A Polaroid dated 1971. Robed figures around a stone altar stained with blood. In later photos, children's bodies lay carved open. And behind the humans were shapes that weren't human at all. Twisted, warped bodies caught in flashes of light. Not tricks, not imaginations. He hadn't been lying. Jonas had been recruited in Vietnam by a soldier named Callahan, the last descendant of a lineage sworn to guard the seal beneath the church. The modern church twisted that ancient duty, using worship to weaken the barrier. If the order failed, the creatures would break through. 2 days until the full moon, I prepared using Jonas's notes, roots, oils, talismans, and then, on the chosen night, I went to the church. The silence inside felt wrong. Following Jonas's directions, I found the hidden staircase behind the altar. In the cellar, the air reeked of rot and old blood. Chanting rose from deeper underground. I crept forward until I reached a vast chamber lit by an eerie green glow, and I saw them, the same creatures from the photos. Misshapen hybrids of human and something monstrous. Taloned limbs scraped the stone, their eyes burned with malice. A dead child lay on the ground beside the altar. The creatures were performing the ritual again. Shaking, I gripped the talisman. I whispered the incantation. A creature lunged at me, claws ripping across my chest. I staggered but didn't stop. With all my strength, I threw the talisman at the altar. Light exploded. The ground shook. Roots tore through the stone floor, whipping around the creatures, dragging them into the earth. One grabbed my ankle, dragging me toward a hole. I slashed wildly with a knife, cutting off its hand and scrambling away. Screams echoed off the walls as the things were torn underground. Then the church bell tolled. I ran. But I knew the truth now. Jonas hadn't died crazy. He died fighting something real. The Order of the Verdant Roots still had work to do. And now the responsibility had passed to me. I'm searching for others who can hear the call. Are you one of us? My wife, Lynn, has been peeking at me from around corners, behind doors, under furniture. At first it was strange. Then it was unsettling. Now it's something else. Something I don't even have a name for. Something that feels wrong in the deepest part of me. We've been together 6 years, married for 11 months. Lynn was always normal, grounded, serious. She never played pranks, never joked around, never liked horror or anything remotely creepy. She couldn't even finish watching The Shining with me. That was Lynn. Rational, soft-spoken, steady. Which is exactly why none of what happened makes sense. The first time was 2 months ago. I was running late for work, rushing down the hallway with a cup of coffee. As I moved toward the front door, something caught my eye. Lynn's eyes staring at me from around the corner. Just her eyes and a sliver of her hair. The rest of her body was hidden behind the wall. When I flinched and said her name, she pulled back like an embarrassed kid and scampered toward the living room. By the time I reached the door, she was gone. I called her a weirdo, and she laughed. I brushed it off and forgot it by lunchtime. 3 nights later, around 2 a.m., I got up for a drink. I was standing in the kitchen drinking orange juice straight from the jug when that awful being watched feeling crawled up my spine. I looked down, and there was Lynn on the floor, grinning up at me from the other side of the kitchen island, eyes wide, too wide, unblinking. Smiles stretched unnaturally across her face. I yelled, stumbled back, and she scuttled away on all fours, her hands and feet tapping rapidly against the tile like an animal escaping. When I went to bed minutes later, she was already there, asleep, breathing deeply like nothing had happened. After that, it got worse. I saw her peeking at me from behind the living room curtains, behind the couch, through the half-open bedroom door. Once, she was inside her grandmother's old trunk, at the foot of our bed, lid barely cracked open, half her face visible, smiling as if she'd been waiting for me. When I asked her why she was doing it, she didn't answer. She simply lowered the trunk lid over herself and hid inside. I kept telling myself she was being silly, trying something new, trying to play, but it didn't feel like play. It felt like something watching me that just happened to be wearing my wife's face. Then came the shower. I was rinsing shampoo out of my hair when I felt that crawling sensation again. I opened my eyes and almost slipped. Lynn was sticking her entire head past the shower curtain. Her body remained behind it, but her face, God. Her eyes were wide and bloodshot, her grin stretched, her hair dripping onto the curtain. Mascara streamed down her face in twin black paths. She didn't blink, didn't speak, didn't even breathe loudly. She just stared at me with that gaping smile. She slowly pulled her head back, then slammed the bathroom door so hard the mirror rattled. I locked the door and stayed inside for an hour. I yelled at her, cursed, demanded she stop. Nothing back except a faint moan and silence. When I finally checked under the door, expecting to see her feet, the hallway was empty. But she hadn't left. She was in the closet, peeking out at me through the crack of the door, eyes wide, trembling with excitement, hands clasped to her chest like she'd been waiting for me to notice her. Her smile was wrong, too big, too alive. I didn't scream. I just ran. Out of the bathroom, down the stairs, out the house barefoot and wet, straight to my car. I heard her laughing from somewhere inside the house, but she didn't chase me. I didn't stop driving until I reached my brother Chris's house 40 minutes away. I ignored Lynn's calls and texts. When I finally looked at my phone, all her messages were normal, loving, concerned, like she hadn't spent weeks sneaking around corners with a deranged grin. I slept on Chris's couch, barely. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her peeking out of somewhere she shouldn't be. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke up just after sunrise. And then I felt it, that awful, heavy sensation of being watched. I looked at the window. Her face was pressed to the glass, grinning, drool streaking down, leaving wet trails. I pounded the window and shouted at her to go home. She didn't move. Her smile just widened. When Chris and his wife came downstairs, Lynn vanished. No footprints outside, just 2 streaks drying on the glass. Chris didn't believe me. Rebecca tried to comfort me. I stayed another night. The next day, Rebecca casually said Lynn had come by in the morning while I was still asleep, saying she was worried about me, saying she wanted me to come home. She looked awful, Rebecca said, like she hadn't slept in days. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to go home. I didn't feel safe, but she was my wife. And if she was sick, if something was wrong, I needed to help her. I tried calling her, no answer, not a text, not a missed call, nothing. A pit grew in my stomach. I drove home around sunset. The house looked dark, motionless. My heart hammered as I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Everything was exactly how I left it, except one thing, a note. On the kitchen table, in Lynn's handwriting, "Come find me, I've gotten better at hiding." The house creaked. Something shifted in the walls, and then from somewhere deep inside the darkness, inches from my ear, a slow, trembling whisper, "Found you."